Bill Russell retired from basketball the same year I was born, 1969. 4 years later, my father bought one season ticket for Russell's old team, the Celtics. Dad started carrying me into games, including this famous one.
Garherd turnaround shot in the air. It's good. It's tied again. I don't believe it.
2 years later, Dad bought a second seat just in time for the unforgettable Larry Bird era.
Now there's a steal by Bird. Underneath the DJ, lays it in.
So really, I grew up in the Boston Garden. And whenever Bill Russell came back, I always thought it was confusing. Why was he coaching another team? Why was he announcing games for CBS instead of us? And why didn't he seem to like us very much? I could still see Russell moving aloofly through the crowd, the cheers bouncing off him. Occasionally he'd wave. Mostly he ignored us. Russell won 11 titles in 13 years, all for Boston. So what happened? In high school, I read his outspoken autobiography, Second Wind, and everything made sense. Boston just never appreciated him. During his peak, he couldn't even sell out the Garden. The locals thought the Celtics were too black. That's what they said. And the more I watched basketball, the more I hated the fact that we never appreciated Bill Russell. When I finally wrote my own basketball book in 2009, I tried to make amends. I spent an entire chapter proving that Russell was better than Wilt Chamberlain, which he was. Bill Russell was the best defensive player ever, and the best teammate ever in any sport. He was also one of the most socially conscious athletes we've ever had, a proud African-American who fearlessly discussed civil rights during a truly frightening time. I never thought Bill Russell got his just due, either as a basketball player or a human being. Eventually, I decided I just had to meet him. I flew to Seattle, and I stopped by Mr. Russell's house. You were the coach of the Sonics in the mid-'70s, and you've lived in Seattle for the last 40 years.
I bought this house in '73.
I remember, because we had season tickets, I think, from when I was 4 years old on. You would come to some of the games, and it was like, just the way people reacted was kind of amazing. And I never saw you play, obviously. I was born the year you retired.
Well, can I tell you something? You didn't miss a thing.
I think I did. I remember I was at a Celtic game, and some older fan came up to me and was like, if you ever read a basketball book, you got to defend Russell. He was the best player ever, ever.
I agree wholeheartedly that this is the greatest player to ever play the game of basketball, Bill Russell.
We came down here, and part of what we wanted to do was like look at all the stuff that you kept. And what does it mean to you when you look through that trophy case? Is it just like a big blur?
It's hard to explain. Each one of those things has a story. Some of the stories are important, like the MVP at the '63 All-Star Game in Los Angeles. That was one of the great experiences for me.
How come?
I invited my father to come to the All-Star Game. And the night before, Chick Hearn was saying that Los Angeles is the basketball capital of the world. And so Red, in his own diplomatic way, says, it'll never be the center of the world until you win a championship. And you guys ain't won nothing.
Yeah.
He's a real diplomat. so I laughed so hard. And so on the way home from the dinner, my father said, yeah, they ought to shut up about that. I said, what are you talking about? He says, I hope you guys kick their asses. I said, you feel that way? He said, yeah. I said, okay, I'll tell you what. We'll win the game tomorrow. I'll make sure of that. And I'll get the MVP. And he said, you could do that? I said, yeah. And I did it.
Russell fakes right and goes to the left. Swings toward the lane. Swings back in on Chamberlain. The hook is good.
After the game, they gave me the trophy for the MVP, which I promised my father I would do.
Bill Russell is the most valuable player in the game, and many fans across the country hail him as the greatest ever to hit the NBA.
As far as trophies are concerned, that was the highlight of my career.
Really?
Yeah, because I could keep my word to my father. My father was my hero because when my mother got sick and she knew she was dying, she asked him to promise her that he would send her boys to college. We buried her in Louisiana. And while we were down there, she had 5 sisters. And so they would decide who was going to take me and who was going to take my brother. And my father says, I'm going to take them both back to California with me. And they said, man can't raise kids. He says, I promised their mother I would try. And so he had a business. And he was making a lot of money. He went back to Oakland, he sold the business. And he started to work in the foundry for $42 a week, which was about half what he had been making before in his business. And he sacrificed so he could be home every night to be a good parent. I was never afraid because I knew that he loved me and he never let me down.
So how many times did he come see you play?
He used to come back to the playoffs. You know, when I got that big contract, I called him up and I says, Dad, you don't have to work anymore. He says to me, I don't want your damn money. I got my own money. I says, but you work in the foundry. You've been working there since I was 12. That's a terrible job. He said, listen, son, I'll give these people 30 of the best years of my life. Now, I'm gonna give them a few of the bad ones.
This is your Topps rookie card. 1957, All-Star Game MVP here. Up here we have all the stuff from, it seems like high school and college.
Nothing from high school.
Nothing from high school? What was this one? I guess this is from...
This is the AAU tournament in my freshman year in college.
It's your first trophy, right?
Yeah.
Was that the year you put it all together?
A guy asked me, he says, you talk about McClymonds and you talk about the Celtics, but you never talk about your career in college. Why not? So I just said, by the time I got to USF, I was already what I was going to be.
Bill Russell, 6-foot 10-inch center of the San Francisco Dons, biggest wheel in the collegiate basketball circuit.
My first varsity game, played Cal Berkeley. Their center was preseason All-American. First 5 shots he took, I blocked. So we go to our huddle, and my coach says to me, you can't play defense that way. I said, what do you mean? He says, that's not the way to play defense.
To block shots?
Yeah, because he'd never seen it.
Turned out Russell wasn't bad at the whole winning thing. He won 2 straight NCAA titles and an Olympic gold medal before arriving in Boston, where Russell and Red Auerbach immediately revolutionized the game. You always talked about blocking shots. You would jump straight up, because if you leaned forward, it was easier to get a foul. But why don't guys do that now?
I don't think they approach shots the way I did. Like all the guys that followed me, I approached blocking shots as a defensive maneuver. I blocked shots as an offensive maneuver. For the first 10 years, I was still surprising people.
Because basketball was a very grounded game.
Yes.
Everybody shooting those hook shots.
It was a horizontal game. And I brought vertical to the game. I talked with Red my rookie year, and he said, do you know how good you are? You're the best player playing basketball. I said, I know that. He says, now I have to confess, I don't know what you're doing. I've never seen anything like it, so I can't help you. But what I will do is as I figure things you're doing, I'll make that part of our system.
Well, when you joined the Celtics, Cousy was the biggest star in the league.
Yes.
I mean, he was considered really the first popular basketball star. I know Mikan was winning titles, but Cousy was like the first entertaining star they had.
Bob Cousy, still today, was the best guy running fast break. So Cousy says to me after I got there, you're a pretty good rebounder. Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of the things I'm good at.
And so we talked, and we decided a spot we want him to go to whenever a shot's taken. When I get a rebound, he said, that'll be the first place you look.
So you get the rebound over your head, and you're already turning to see where he is, and you're hitting that spot, and he's off.
Yeah. So our fast break was started as the shot was taken.
Styles of play have changed too, making for a more aggressive, crowd-pleasing brand of ball. The key to this new style of play is the fast break.
The thing that struck me watching the tapes, you know, everybody talks about small ball now, and that's like the new rage, and centers don't matter as much, all this stuff. I watched those tapes of the 1960 Celtics, and it basically was small ball. It was up and down, and it was similar to what people think they're watching now.
Well, one of my great, I think, attributes, I could play with anybody.
The NBA had never seen a big man doing the things that Russell was doing. But it was his unique mental approach off the court that made the Celtics a dynasty. Explain the process to me, though, about what it took for you to get in the state of mind you needed to be just to play.
I had to almost be in a rage. Nothing went on outside the borderline of the court. I couldn't hear anything, I couldn't see anything, and nothing mattered. And I could anticipate every move that every player made.
So somebody would be dribbling over midcourt, and in your head, you already kind of knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
West all alone. Look at Russell come down. And what a play by Russell!
Boston fans have already started to carry Coach Red Auerbach off the court. Their Celtics have just won their 6th consecutive championship of the National Basketball Association.
Make no mistake, the Celtics lucked out by getting Russell. After college, he was drafted number 2 by the Hawks, who were playing in St. Louis at the time. Not the best city for William Felton Russell.
St. Louis was overwhelmingly racist.
So, like, were you frightened about potentially going to St. Louis? Like, I mean, it definitely had a reputation.
No, if I'd have got drafted for St. Louis, I wouldn't have won the NBA.
You wouldn't have been in the NBA? Red acquired Russell's rights for future Hall of Famers Ed Macauley and Cliff Hagan. Although the city of Boston definitely had some issues, Russell quickly learned that his new team was way ahead of the curve when it came to race.
See, there's a guy named Don Barksdale that played for the Celtics. So Don called me up and says, hey, you couldn't ask for a better organization. Walter Brown and Auerbach, they're really good people.
6 years earlier, the Celtics had drafted Chuck Cooper, the first black player ever drafted in the NBA.
When Cooper came into Boston to sign his first contract, one of the other owners asked Walter Brown, you know he's colored. And Walter Brown said, I don't care if he's polka dot. That's the player we drafted. The Boston Celtics was the first NBA team to start 5 black players. Now, they were rewarded for being so progressive.
With titles.
Yes, but the city did not appreciate it.
Isn't that crazy? You're the best sports team of all time, right? Not just the best basketball team, but the best sports team ever. And during the regular season, you guys are getting 8,000 fans a game. And at the same time, hockey was selling out, right? Bobby Orr and those guys,
right.
They're selling out every game.
Line up. Line up. Now, program.
We did a survey about what we could do to improve attendance. Over 50% of the responses says too many black guys. So the Celtics, to me, were a blue team in a sea of red.
What does that mean?
That means that there was really no connection for me between the fans in Boston and the Boston Celtics. I remember when Kuz retired, a guy walks up to me, I was in Boston, the guy says, what are you guys gonna do now? You don't have Kuz to carry you. So I said, well, it'll be difficult, we gotta make an adjustment. But do yourself a favor and find out who the MVP in this league was the last 3 years.
The red-hot Boston Celtics look almost unbeatable as they take aim on another title. Big Bill Russell, number 6, is one of the men responsible for their phenomenal play. Big Bill was last year's most valuable player, and he's just as great this season.
Now, you take the MVP trophies that I won 5 times.
I think we have all 5 right there.
I never finished any higher than 3rd leading scorer on my team.
But you're always second in assists, you're always first in rebounds. And then they didn't keep track of blocks, which was the big tragedy of your career statistically.
That's not a tragedy.
Well, it's sad. I mean, we use statistics now to measure everything.
See, it's not sad to me.
Well, it's sad for me. I wrote the book. I wrote a 700-page basketball book. I was trying to figure out like how to put what you were doing defensively in context. There was no way to do it. I mean, there's been nobody like you since.
Folks tell me, say, you know, you're the greatest defensive player. I said, most of the guys I played against found me very offensive.
You always need the best to bring the best out in you. So I was always fortunate to have to know that I was going to play against William Felton Russell.
The winning is only important if you beat the best. My friend Wilt Norman Chamberlain was far and away the best player I've ever played against.
It's the greatest debate in NBA history. Russell or Chamberlain? From 1959 through 1969, they played each other an astonishing 142 times. From day one, Wilt Chamberlain was a Goliath, the greatest individual performer the game has ever seen.
There will be a period of orientation for me, of course, like it is for every newcomer in the NBA, but I think in the long run, I'll be able to handle myself man-to-man with almost anyone in the league.
For me, there's no debate. Russell's teams won 2/3 of their games against Wilt's teams. Russell's teams finished 16-2 in elimination games and 10-0 in Game 7s. Russell's teams won 11 titles. Wilt's teams won 2. Russell even won 5 MVPs, with 4 coming at Wilt's expense. He's the greatest winner of all time, and it's not close. Let's talk about these MVPs. I think you said 62, which is all the way down here, that was your favorite one because that was the year Wilt averaged 50 points a game, and Oscar had the triple-double, but you were the MVP.
Well, we won more games. I mean, it wasn't close. We won the Eastern Conference by 12 or 13 games.
Wilt's 50, did you feel like that's something he could have done every year?
No, that's special. That's once in a lifetime. In fact, I told him, I said, you know, Wilt, I think I'm the only guy on this planet that knows how really good you are. Because he was smart on top of everything else. Yeah. He was the smartest guy I played against. When I was a rookie, Wilt was a freshman at Kansas. We played a Sunday game in St. Louis. And he drove to St. Louis from Kansas and looked me up, and we spent the day together on Saturday.
And you'd never met him before that?
No. And nobody knew that we knew each other.
He'd come past my house on Thanksgiving because we played Philly, Boston all the time, sleep in my bed, eat the food, sleep in my bed, and go out there and whip my butt. You understand? And my mother would say, "No, Wilt, we shouldn't feed Bill so well the next time." You know, whatever. Yeah, well, okay, you're right now. We're gonna do something about that. You understand?
People seem to think that your friendship with him helped you a little bit competitively because he liked you so much.
That's a crock. Do you know what the NBA rebound record is?
It's 55 rebounds by Wilt Chamberlain.
You know who the other center was that night?
It was Bill Russell.
Now, how's that taken easy? Well, after he got in the league, folks were trying to compare us. I decided that I will never change the way I play for the Celtics to try to play to match him.
I wrote a chapter in my book about you and Chamberlain and some of the perceptions that have emerged since you guys finished playing. And one of the things that almost seemed a little bit of a myth to me was that people say you always had better teammates than him, which wasn't necessarily true for about half of those seasons.
He played with some good guys. And we talked about that one time, just once.
After you played or during?
Long after we played. He said that was not true, simply because his teammates had to feed him, and I fed my teammates.
And the thing that you did was you were able to adjust to whoever your teammates were.
My adjustments were always, what will I have to do to make sure we keep winning?
Bill Russell, 30 points and 40, I repeat, 40 rebounds.
You get the 10,000 point basketball here and the 20,000 rebounds. I don't think anyone's getting 20,000 rebounds again. I'm going to say I think you and Wilt were the only two. I think that's it.
He called me up one day. Sports Illustrated had a cover and said, "Is Dennis Rodman the best rebounder ever?"
Oh, God.
And Wilt was so annoyed. And I cleaned it up saying annoyed. So he calls me up and he asked me, did I believe this bleep? And so I said, well, I don't pay attention to that. He says, I had more rebounds a quarter than he had a whole game.
In the 60s, Wilt was just picked apart more than any athlete. Why doesn't he do this? Why does he only care about numbers? Did you think it was fair?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I never did any of that foolishness.
You never said one thing. Was it true that you always wanted $1 more than Wilt? Or that was the end?
That's just one time. What happened was, Ritter and I was sitting there at dinner, and one of the waiters came and said, "Did you hear about Wilt?" He just signed a contract for $100,000. Oh, good. Good for him.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah, I says, Red, you know what I want, don't you? He said, what? I says, I want $100,001.
And he gave it to you.
Kicking and screaming, he gave it.
He must have been miserable.
It's all over. And there they go. They've won it again.
The man has 11 rings and 10 fingers. Now, I asked him, hey, Bill, why not let me have one of those rings that you can't wear? You understand? You know, and he gave me that cackle of his. So I said, well, maybe I'll give you a finger then. So I gave him the old finger. So he can have a chance to use that 11th ring he has.
As the 60s go along, you become the ultimate winner and the ultimate teammate. And Wilt is this guy who had all these records, but we all know winning's the only thing that matters. Did you feel like he was starting to resent you at all, like the way that people
No, I don't
talked
think
about
so.
you?
I don't think so at all. I don't think either one of us ever resented the other guy.
Chamberlain can't move. He really twisted that knee.
Game 7 in the '69 finals, Wilt got injured in the second half. He ended up playing.
And this could be a big factor in the closing minutes of this game.
And for the first time, you were critical about him.
What happened was I was speaking in a college in Nebraska, I think, and there was a reporter in the guy there with the students.
Oh, and you didn't know there was a reporter there?
And he says, you wouldn't have won if Wilt hadn't got hurt. And I was annoyed. And I said, if I got hurt and so I couldn't play, they'd have to take me straight to the hospital.
And you guys didn't talk for years?
Yes. But a couple of years later, I had a chance that we were alone. I looked him in the eye and I said, I apologize.
Wilt Chamberlain died today at his Bel Air home of an apparent heart attack. The Big Dipper was 63 years old.
I'm unspeakably injured by what happened the last few days. This was an integral part of my life and a good friend.
Wilt and I were not rivals. I tell people that, and they say, what are you talking about? We were competitors. You see, in a rivalry, there's a victor and a vanquished. He was never vanquished. And so we were competitors.
So when we came down here, we noticed you had some stuff framed. I just want to know, like, why you picked these
One of
photos.
my wives did that.
Oh, so it wasn't you? Oh. All right. But there has to be some rhyme or reason. Like, what about the Sportsman of the Year, '68? Such a tumultuous year in American history.
Well, the reason that was important was it had nothing to do with basketball.
Yeah.
It had to do with being an athlete with social conscience.
You are a superb athlete and have intense pride in that, but to be judged on other things too.
Yes, you know, it's something that says we see you as a man. Rather than this is an athlete or a performer, this is a man. And this is what this award means to me.
In 1967, Muhammad Ali risked his career by refusing to be drafted to fight in Vietnam. America's finest black athletes stood by him, with Bill Russell leading the way. Look at some of the personalities from that decade. You and Ali and Jim Brown and Kareem, like, these are some of the most thoughtful athletes ever, and you're all there at the same time.
We came out of friendship to Muhammad Ali. And I know that we wanted to find out from him. You know, you read the papers, you see on television and all this kind of stuff, what is going on?
What I did, or tried to do, was support all these guys.
And you were also the first African-American athlete who was outspoken, who talked about stuff that really nobody was talking about in the 60s. Like, you were the first one.
Do you think that you will get some white kids to play basketball with Negro kids?
I think so. I don't see why not. My kids play with white kids, and nobody got hurt yet.
Jackie Robinson was a hero to all of us.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know that I was pallbearer at Jackie Robinson's funeral. And I had enormous respect for him. But my attitude was that Jackie took us from point A to point B. And I want to go from point B to point C. It was my inheritance from Jackie to do things, to seize that opportunity. Go back to my childhood. When we first moved into the projects, my mother was unpacking, and I was sitting on the steps, and these 4 kids ran by, and one of them slapped me as he was going by. So I did what 9-year-old kids do. I went home and told my mother, I went upstairs and told my mother, that guy hit me. She grabbed the house keys and grabbed me, and we went all through the projects looking for those guys. And she said, these the guys? I said, yes, ma'am. Well, you're gonna fight every one of them one at a time. It was 5 of them. I lost 3 and won 2. And so I'm going home, crying, and she says, don't cry. You did what you had to do. You had to stand up for yourself.
And that lesson you just took through the 50s and 60s.
The things that I did was I never let anybody, as my mother used to call it, run over me.
I left the hotel and I went to a restaurant down the street. And the proprietor asked me what I wanted. I said, this is a restaurant, isn't it? I'd like to get something to eat. He told me no.
We played a game and we were booked to play a game in Lexington, Kentucky. Casey went down to the restaurant in the hotel we were staying, and they would not serve him. I decided, and the other guys decided to go along with me not to play. So I told Ray we were leaving. I said, because it's important to me that everybody everywhere knows that the black players decided they'll stand up for themselves.
And that was it?
Yeah. Although one of the newspapers in St. Louis wrote that the black players embarrassed the Celtics and they should be suspended and fined.
Martin Luther King Jr. was killed tonight in Memphis, Tennessee, shot in the face as he stood alone on the balcony of his hotel room.
We were talking about 1968 and when Martin Luther King got assassinated. What do you remember now? It's been almost 45 years since that happened.
Well, you know, I had met him at the March on Washington.
And you were there for the I Have a Dream speech?
Yes, yes. In fact, I was invited to go on the stage, but I respectfully declined because they had been working on that for more than a year, and I hadn't done anything. And I didn't think it was right or fair to me go up on the stage and say, see, I'm one of the guys.
Yeah.
And so I sat in the first row.
So you get the news that he's been killed. You're about to play the Sixers in the '68 playoffs.
Well, they asked us, do we want to call the game off? And someone pointed out that 12 or 13,000 people out in the streets with emotions off the chart. And if we play the game, they'd give the folks a chance to cool down. And that's the reason we had the game.
So you're glad you had the game in retrospect? It seems like it was the right idea.
I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. We did what we thought was right at that time.
President of the United States said in 40 years he thought a Negro could be elected president. But when the atmosphere is as it is today, it won't happen for 400 years. A few young people here that would like to be president of the United States. If you'd like to, don't give it up. You don't have to give it up. Because in spite of everything, I want you to remember one thing. You can do anything that you want to do, if you want to do it bad enough. Thank you very much.
Bill Russell, the man, is someone who stood up for the rights and dignity of all men. He marched with King. He stood by Ali. When a restaurant refused to serve the black Celtics, he refused to play in the scheduled game. But he kept on focusing on making the teammates who he loved better players and made possible the success of so many who would follow.
You received the Medal of Freedom, which is the highest honor that an American citizen can get.
I feel honored to be on the same stage with the president.
All the stuff you fought for in the 60s and then it leads to that moment. That's pretty cool too.
That's what he said to me. He said, thanks for the inspiration. He said that I was one of the reasons he was able to become president. because I elevated the standards of behavior for black folks.
Here he is, the new coach of the Celtics, the best team.
You haven't seen this, by the way. We borrowed this from the Hall of Fame. This is the whistle that Red gave to you.
Yeah, is that right?
Yeah. Auerbach retired from coaching in 1966, naming Russell his successor, the first professional black coach ever. Everyone thought it was a groundbreaking moment. Naturally, Russell disagreed.
If he had mentioned that I would be the first African-American coach, I told him where to shove that.
Right, because you didn't care about that.
No, I sincerely felt I was the best person for that job. In fact, I didn't even think about it until the press conference when we announced it.
As the first Negro coach of a major league sport, can you do the job impartially without any racial prejudice in reverse?
Yes.
How?
Because the most important factor is respect. And basketball respects a man for his ability, period.
When you took over as the player coach, it was a little different of a league than it is now. Now these teams have 7, 8 assistant coaches. It was basically, you were just a coach. Like, did you even have an assistant?
No, I did not have an assistant.
He has been tremendous in getting us up for ball games. And Don, he's a little bit tougher than Red.
Pat Riley always talked about when you win a title, everybody wants more. Guys want more money. They want more minutes.
Well, it's hard to keep a team together.
Yeah. So how did you guys do that? Some of it had to do with you and the fact that you were so unselfish.
Well, I saw John Havlicek one day sitting there. I said, "What's wrong with you?" He says, "Nothing that $3,000 won't take care of." I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Well, Red browbeated me into signing his contract, and I wanted more money. But you know how Red is." So I go to Red. I said, "What'd you do to John?" John Havlicek is my best ball player.
He gets it out deep, and Havlicek steals it. Over the sand goes. Havlicek stole the ball. Bill Russell wants to grab Havlicek. He hugs him.
So I said, "Red, here's what I want you to do. Give him the $3,000 that he wants." I said, "But I don't want you to tell him that I told you to do that." He said, "Why not?" I said, "Well, Red, I'll be gone long before John. And I want his loyalty to be to the Celtics, not to me."
In Russell's first year as player coach, Boston's historic run of 8 straight titles abruptly ended. Not only did Wilt finally beat the Celtics, Philly's crowd buried them. Prematurely, as it turned out. The next spring, Boston rallied from a 3-1 deficit to beat Philly, eventually capturing Russell's 10th title. So much for Boston being dead. By 1969, Russell had secretly decided he was done. This would be his final season. For the 6th time that decade, Boston faced the Lakers in the finals. This time, the creaky Celtics were heavy underdogs. The Lakers didn't just have Jerry West and Elgin Baylor. Now they had Wilt Chamberlain, too. Uh-oh. Fittingly, it came down to a Game 7. The Lakers had home court advantage. The Celtics had Russell, somebody who had never lost a Game 7.
I can't help but wonder, how do you feel about going into another 7th game, this time on somebody else's floor?
We've done it before.
Everybody thinks you guys are like the old fart Celtics. You don't have a chance. The Lakers are going to be the new powerhouse.
I want to set the game up for you so maybe you understand my attitude.
I knew what he was going to say. Even though Russell owned them all decade, the Lakers were so confident before that Game 7, they stuck 10,000 balloons in the rafters to be dropped right after they won. Before the game, Russell found a copy of those celebration plans. You're not going to believe this, but he took it a little personally.
I said, if this team played the best game any team in the history of this franchise played, they would still lose. I said, it's impossible for them to win tonight. I said, I'm explaining to you. They are a great basketball team. Tonight, we're going to find out how good are they at track and field. We're going to fast break. So every time you shoot, I want one guard on this side, near half court, another guard on this side.
So it's the old Cousy play.
Yeah.
That's what he's doing now.
I said, the key is defensive rebound and outlet passing. I am the best that ever did that. We're going to run them out of the gym.
80.
and Russell shoved it through.
We're 17 points ahead going into the last quarter.
And then you held on down the stretch, basically.
Yes.
Right?
With Wilt watching the last few minutes from the bench, Russell prevailed over his favorite competitor one more time. The Celtics miraculously celebrated one last title. And no, they never dropped those balloons.
And the Celtics, they have done it again. A spectacular finish.
At the end of that game, you got interviewed by Jack Twyman, and you literally couldn't speak.
Chris, I'm here with Bill Russell. Bill, this must have been a great win for you.
Jack?
I know it's hard to say what's in your mind right now, Bill, and it must have been a great win.
Well, this is such a great bunch of guys, you know, and it's just been so fabulous the way they played for me. And it sounds all corny, you know, to start talking like that, but I told these guys before the game, I don't care what happens, I wouldn't trade you guys for any guys in the world.
You hadn't told anybody you were retiring?
No. I never had to second guess myself about, well, maybe you could have played another year, or maybe you should retire a year earlier. I played just enough games. Not one too many, not one too few.
Russell finished with a record 11 NBA titles, including 2 as player coach. Unlike so many, he left at the perfect time, on his own terms, for the right reasons. He couldn't summon that rage anymore. The great Bill Russell was done.
Each year, the Finals MVP is given to an exceptional, extraordinary player based on his performance on the grandest stage in all of basketball. This award will henceforth be named for Bill Russell, the ultimate champion and true legend of the game.
I want to talk about this trophy because they did not hand out the NBA Finals MVP until 1969.
That was my last year.
Right.
And that's the first time they had it, okay?
And your team won.
And that was the only time that the MVP of the Finals was on the losing team.
Jerry West.
And I had no objection to him winning it.
Well, it's hard to be the most valuable on a team that didn't win. I would think valuable means player that helped the team win the most.
I think he averaged around 40 points a game.
But your team won the title. But then they ended up naming this after you. Plus, you get to go to the final game every year.
Yeah, I get a free ticket.
You get a free ticket, good seats. They get you nice seats.
How are you, sir?
The great Tim Duncan.
Oh, the great Bill Russell. I just heard about the award. That's awesome. Unbelievable. That's unbelievable for the award, not for you, obviously. It's an honor to have your name on there. That's great. That's great.
Thank you.
Great to see you.
You get to see whoever the best player of that finals is. That's kind of cool. It's like a little bit of a torch passing. I mean, you can see the look on these guys' faces. Like, not only did they just win the title, but now you're standing there, 11 titles in 13 years, and you're giving them the trophy. It's got to be amazing.
Most of those guys playing now are only related to their grandfathers.
I'm the other number 6. No, you're the original number 6. That's the only reason why I wear this number.
What do these guys say to you? What do guys like LeBron and Kobe and the best players now, what are like the most common things that they ask you?
Kobe says to me, I read all your books.
But I got that because I read your book.
Oh, okay.
That's how I picked up on it.
Okay. And he said the thing that I tried to emulate was you said when you joined the Celtics, the first thing you did was scout the Celtics so that you know how to play with these guys.
So he borrowed that from you?
Yeah.
So you helped a Laker? Right after you retired, everybody started making a lot of money.
I'm very, very supportive of that.
Well, you guys paved the way in the 60s with all the stuff you did.
What we did in the 64 All-Star game, we struck it to start a union.
The NBA had high hopes for the 1964 All-Star game, which was scheduled for prime time on ABC. Russell and many of the game's biggest stars had other ideas. For once, they had leverage. They decided to fight for improved player rights.
So who was it? It was you and Oscar?
Wilt, Jerry West, Elgin Baylor.
This was like the first sports labor near strike that's ever happened.
We're supposed to talk the day before the game. And it was a huge snowstorm. And so the owners said, well, everybody couldn't get here, so we can't do it. We'll talk to you next year. That was not good enough. So we said, we're not going to play. They said, well, the hell with it. Well, we just won't have a game. But they had their first contract with ABC to televise the first All-Star game. And ABC says, you want us to broadcast your games? You can't even get your players on the floor. They wanted that big TV money. So they said, well, if you guys play the game tonight, at the end of the season, they'll recognize the Players Association.
You know, when I was researching my book, I was always amazed that I didn't even know that story until I did the research. It feels like that 64 All-Star game and then everything that happened after should have been remembered a little more than it was. Because that day basically paved the way for guys now.
Yeah, well, I think it happened in all sports.
You basically never played basketball ever again after Game 7 of the 1969 Finals?
I didn't play anymore.
Not one pickup game, nothing?
No. I had one game with my oldest son.
Can you tell that story?
I took my kids to the Olympics.
1972.
Yeah, and he says, I'm playing basketball every day and I'm running out of competition.
Uh-oh.
He says, you want to play me one-on-one? Son, I don't play basketball anymore. You scared of being embarrassed? No. Well, I think he's scared. Okay. So we go out to this court. I said, how many baskets? He says, 21. I says, okay. So I got him 19-0. And then I says, now you can score twice. And he says, why? I said, just score twice. So he scores twice, and then I finished off, so I beat him 21-2. He says, well, why'd you let me score twice? I said, for two reasons. One, you can't go away and say that I was so mean that I skunked you. And you could also brag that you scored twice on Bill Russell.
And he never challenged you again, I'm guessing?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
So that was it? That was the last time you played?
Yeah, that was the last time.
An empty court in Munich, Germany against your son?
Yes.
After you retired from the Celtics, you moved to LA for a couple years, which you were a season ticket holder of the Lakers, which I never knew. Weird to think of you going to Laker games.
You want to hear a funny story?
Yeah.
That's absolutely true. They had a ceremony for Jerry West. They had me sit next to Jack Kent Cooke, who owned the team at the time. About a week later, I get a call. Jack Kent Cooke wanted to talk to me. So he says, Bill, I've been thinking about it. What I'm going to do is have you come out of retirement and play for the Lakers.
What?
So I says, don't you have a guy named Wilt Chamberlain playing center for you? He said, yeah. I said, how would he feel playing backup center?
So he actually thought you'd want to play for the Lakers?
I said, Jack, I never play basketball again. But if I were, it would only be for the Celtics.
Russell did return to the NBA as coach of the Seattle Supersonics. Then he reinvented himself as a television analyst. He'd only returned to Boston as a network employee, always seeming like he was disconnected from us. Well, unless he was with Red. Then he seemed like family again.
Red, you want to say something?
What I want to say is, you know how it feels because you've been here before. Me, I haven't scored a point. You know?
But you kind of brought the guys here that scored the points.
Well,
so you're overpaid.
As a Celtics fan, like, it's weird, you're probably in the furthest part of America from Boston. Like, did you ever think of ever settling in Massachusetts or anything, or did you just want to get out after you left?
Well, you know how I retired. We won the championship on Tuesday night. And Friday morning, a reporter from one of the Boston newspapers came into Red's office and said, are you satisfied with the coaching you had this year?
Oh, God.
Red said, what are you talking about? Just won a championship. Well, there were some reporters did not want a black guy coaching their Celtics. So if I leave the team and Sam leaves the team, it probably will not be that good a team. So the atmosphere in Boston, I wouldn't have survived that as a coach.
I mean, do you regret not going to the Hall of Fame or to the when they retired your number?
Not one moment.
I mean, it's kind of weird to retire your number and not be there, though.
In fact, I asked Red not to retire it.
So you retire, you've won 11 titles in 13 years. All they want to do is retire your number. Like, were you that angry at the city of Boston? Who were you angry at?
It had
media?
nothing to do with anger. I don't need any validation. I played, and I played. And that trip and that experience was enough to last me for a lifetime.
I can't get one flag
and say that's special. They all meant so much. And that guy giggling over there, he was with me on the most. Will you just raise your hand, sir?
I hope that one day, in the streets of Boston, children will look up at a statue built not only to Bill Russell the player, but Bill Russell the man.
Now, a good 44 years after he retired, the city of Boston is finally building a statue in his honor. But for Bill Russell, only one thing has ever truly mattered.
The Celtics were a way of life to me. A group of people so diverse you cannot imagine, working together day in and day out for a common goal.
I thoroughly enjoyed my teammates. And I always said that when I left the Celtics, I could not go to heaven because there'd be a step down. I am pure, 100% Celtic. I think if you slashed my wrist, the blood would have been green.